You have a wonderful opportunity to create an oasis with your yard. You can create this beautiful sanctuary, not only for yourself, but also for the community around you. And by community, I mean the surrounding parts of nature, the surrounding ecosystem, not only your neighbors, but you, local wildlife, your watershed, and all of the components that make up your small region where your house is. It's easy to say, this is my yard, this is where my fence is, these are my boundaries, but nature doesn't understand those boundaries. So the more people that we can get on board with having native plants, having ecological landscaping, reducing chemical use, the better it is for everybody. So we're really busy. I understand that I'm busy too. And it's sometimes hard to take a moment and stop and smell the roses to say, oh, I've had a long day. Now it's time for me to have some downtime and relax. But if you have this beautiful space at your own house, in your yard, I bet you'll be a little bit more likely to have that moment more frequently. Especially if you live in an urban area or a suburban area, there's a lot of concrete, roads, sidewalks, buildings, signs. There's not a lot of space where you just look out and you just see nature, trees, sky, flowers. And I think that's important. There's actual research that says that people who spend more time outside are happier and healthier. So the more lovely your space is, the more comfortable your space is, maybe you need some shade, the more likely you'll be to go outside. There's a lot of natural systems that should be occurring in your yard, but maybe aren't because of the way that your landscape and the surrounding landscapes have been maintained over the years. All of these things should be kind of naturally happening, naturally thriving. And we're going to help you restore some of those natural systems. One of the natural systems that work in your yard that may need a little bit of help is predator-prey relationships. I'm talking about tiny predators and tiny prey. In fact, usually insects eating other insects, but also birds, lizards, toads. All of these different animals naturally eat insects. And so you want these relationships to happen so they'll eat the pest bugs that are bothering your plants. And when you put chemicals on your plants, whether they're fertilizers or pesticides or whatever, they're poisoning these insects, whether they're designed to kill the insect or not. They're poisoning the birds and they're poisoning all sorts of things. So the more that you can do to have a healthy landscape so you don't need those poisons or won't be inclined to use those chemicals, the better off we'll all be, including those natural helpers. This is one that's hard for a lot of folks in the city. So this beautiful forest is thriving, it's healthy, it's happy. It's thriving because it's taking care of itself. Those leaves are falling from the trees, the sticks, the bugs, the bird poop, all this stuff is falling to the ground in the forest and it's naturally decomposing over time. You could say the forest is kind of self-composting. So what this does is it's feeding these soil microorganisms, these beneficial critters that live in the soil that actually help your plants to take in the nutrients through their roots. Your soil is actually the foundation for healthy plants in your yard. So when we mow the lawn and we take the grass clippings off, when we rake up the leaves, when we remove all of the sticks and we put chemicals on the soil, you're damaging those beneficial organisms and taking away their food source. And then what a lot of folks do, and I joke about this, but it's really true, is we remove all of the natural leaves and the grass clippings and whatnot from the yard. We go to the store and we buy these plastic bags full of other colors of mulch. Well, we just removed all of the organic matter from the yard. Then we go buy new organic matter in plastic bags and spread it around. Go figure. So anyway, that forest, it's healthy, it's taking care of itself, and it's thriving. And I really love this graphic because it demonstrates why those soil organisms are so important. I want to draw your attention here to this mushroom. You'll notice that the mushroom is attached to the tree. This is an example of a beneficial relationship between a plant and a fungus. That fungus is actually helping that plant to take in water and to take in nutrients from the soil so that the plant can be healthier. There's all of these wonderful relationships below the ground, and it's important to realize that our soil is so important and to take care of it. And in the city, a lot of our soil has been really damaged. That's why a lot of folks have trouble with keeping plants alive, or that's why trees often fall over in storms, because the soil is compacted from years of abuse and from development. It's smushed down, so plant roots can't grow through it. Another problem that happens because the soil is so compacted is that the water can't go down into it either. So we'll have erosion and runoff and the need to put poisons and chemicals on the lawn or on the plants to keep them healthy. Well, if we kept the soil healthy, none of those things would be needed because the soil would be able to provide the nutrients for your plants because those soil organisms are there to take care of your plants for you. Another natural system that we have in place, a natural pattern, is day and night. We've done a lot to make sure our evenings are illuminated so our streets are safe, our yards are safe for security, for safety on the streets when you're driving around. But unfortunately, what that does is it confuses wild creatures. It confuses wildlife, both plants and animals. Some plants have difficulty blooming and therefore creating seeds and reproducing when it's light out at night because they don't understand when it's nighttime and they don't have that resting period. It interrupts the migration pattern for birds, and it also confuses sea turtles for where to go after they hatch. Some of them turn the wrong way and they don't go out to sea, they go out into the street or up into someone's yard along the water instead of out into the ocean where they need to go. You probably went to school and you learned about spring, summer, fall, and winter and these different seasons. And, you know, this April showers bring May flowers, and warm summertime where you plant your garden, and then the leaves fall in autumn or the fall, and we have snow in the winter. Well, you may have noticed we don't have snow in the winter in Florida usually. Well, it's because we don't have the typical seasons either. We have more so a wet season and a dry season. And what that means is our summers are hot, wet, and humid. Our winters are cooler, but not cold, and they're drier. So we have this wet, dry season. What you'll notice in the summertime in Florida with most plants is they grow wildly, they grow vigorously because of all this rain and humidity. And then in the wintertime, their growth slows a lot. Some trees lose their leaves, but not all of them do. Some plants might die back and then reemerge in the spring, but not all plants do. Some are perennial, some are annual. And some trees are deciduous, they lose their leaves, and some don't. So it's important to realize that this natural system is okay. Your grass, if you have grass in your yard, won't probably grow in the winter. It might not even be green in the wintertime. It might turn brown, and the only thing that's green in your yard are the weeds. And that's okay because that's what's supposed to happen. And applying all these chemicals and doing all these different things to try to get your grass to grow and to look a certain way all year long isn't natural. There's all sorts of other examples too about how people have tried to trick the seasons to thinking that we should look the same all year just because we don't have snow. But that's simply not the case. We do still have seasons, so just look a little bit different. Most land, in fact, 85% of the land east of the Mississippi River is privately owned, meaning it is owned by a person or a business, not by the government. It's not publicly owned. So you might think, well, you know, the national parks, The state parks, they're where our natural spaces are. Let them worry about the wildlife and the ecosystem and all that. That's only 15% of the land. So if we're relying on those natural spaces to preserve our wildlife and our natural habitats for all animals, including the ones that you may want in your yard, like songbirds and butterflies, and the ones that our food system depends on, like the bees, well, we're going to be sorely disappointed because that's not going to be enough space for those animals. Another benefit to this privately owned land is that most privately owned land owners can easily make the decision to transform their landscape. Whether it's a yard or a ranch or whatever we're talking about here, you can usually just say, you know what, I want to plant something different, and go out and do it. If you want to make a change like that in a national park or in a public space, there's a whole chain of command, a whole line of bureaucracy that may need to be navigated. And there's a whole lot of work involved with changing publicly owned landscapes. So I encourage you to embrace this idea that our privately owned land, meaning your yard or your property, is vitally important to the survival of our wildlife. And we feel very strongly, as does Dr. Tallamy, that native plants will really help those wild critters to be able to have the habitat and the food that they need to thrive.